Welcome back to the next installment of this Q&A session. Let's get right into it as we look at this first one. Who is your predicted 2016 presidential winner? I do believe that Trump is being set up really to be a distraction for Hillary Clinton. I believe that the establishment wants Hillary Clinton to be put there in place. And I do believe also that the general public, many of them in fact, want another Clinton, and that's why they want to vote Hillary Clinton. But it's too early to tell at this point, so we'll see where it all goes from there, and I will definitely be covering it as the months go on. How can we build a new economic system on better values than selfishness and greed? How about caring for the people and sustainability of the planet? Well, this all begins with you. It begins at the grassroots. You need to set that example for everybody in everything you do. So many times I often hear that people are so upset about genetically modified food. They hate it. They hate genetically modified food. They hate the fact that these companies are destroying the food and they're really hurting people. We know the dangers of GMOs, but then you see them eating it. So are you really doing something to make change, or are you just talking? And that's what it all comes down to. You need to do your due diligence. You have to look into these things. You can't just pick up a package of something and just assume that doesn't contain genetically modified food. You need to do your due diligence every single time. If you eat processed food, if you eat condiments, if you eat all these different things, you're getting those GMOs. Don't feed their system. Don't put your savings in the banking system. You're feeding the bankers. That's the way it works. It's very simple. And we all need to be doing this. 2 questions. What is your qualifications? I already talked about this in a previous video. And also, why is India's growing rapidly in spite of a global slowdown? Well, India and many of the other emerging economies are in fact growing at a much higher rate than many of the Western countries. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this can go on forever. At the same time, you have very high rates of inflation in these countries typically. So the growth and the inflation rates sort of coincide. So individuals there don't necessarily feel that growth as well as they could because they have such high rates of inflation. If they're invested properly, they may be able to do well, but it's tricky there. One, they have a lot of growth potential because there's more, basically, they're starting from a lower point essentially. There's infrastructure that needs to be built and they're willing to get into public works projects knowing that it will pay off in the end. That's why they do that. As for the qualifications, just please understand, I've already gone into it before, but please understand that don't trust me. There's no reason you should trust me. You should be looking into everything on your own. I'm just here to point in the right directions. That's all I'm doing. With the US $19 trillion in debt, not including the unfunded liabilities, is it beneficial for someone in their early 30s to save for 30 years for retirement? Well, quite frankly, I do believe that retirement accounts will be confiscated. If you want to know more about this, go over to my eCourse, my free eCourse, and that is at themoneygps.com/free eCourse, and you can see the video I did about this. It's, Chris Wall, thank you for your comment there. When the dollar collapses, do you recommend gold or silver? Many believe that a silver scarcity due to its commercial consumption will cause the ratio to change, making an ounce of silver virtually equal to gold. I actually talked a bit about this in my book as well, and silver has more upside potential, but also does have more downside potential. My personal recommendation to, myself, because I'm not making any recommendations, is 50-50 actually. Despite the fact that there could be more upside, I always just say somewhere around the 50-50 mark, and that way you can sleep better at night. Are you a financial planner? Once again, don't trust me. I'm nobody. I'm just a guy on YouTube, and that's all you need to know. I do work in the financial industry, but don't take anything I say legitimate. I'm just a person pointing in a particular direction. Which paper stock would be profitable? How do derivatives, puts, and financial instruments work to make a profit? I don't get into that, in fact, on this channel at all. I also don't talk about paper stocks at the time, other than that you should get your money out of them at this time. Many people will make a fortune if the stock market crashes. Many will do great. They'll make more money then than the years prior. But at this time, I just believe that is too risky. There's too much fragility in the stock market to take those risks. So instead, we buy real assets. Thanks for your hard work. Thank you. 6-year-old daughter was born handicapped, and due to the issues of the birth mother, got the insurance money. Has to be invested until her 18th birthday. Handcuffed, got to follow the certain rules of her investment bank, and essentially not able to take it out. So what I would suggest to you is look up unlocking rules. And this goes for anyone watching. If you have a particular account that's supposedly locked in, look up unlocking. And then, there are different reasons why you're able to unlock certain locked in accounts. I would Google the name of your city or region or country, and then start from there and type in the word unlocking and then the type of investment, whether it's 401ks or whatever it might be, let's just say. And that's a good place to start. Then you can talk to someone at the bank even and just pretend that you're interested in it, and they'll give you some information if at all possible, and just tell them that you'll invest the money in one of their mutual funds or something. Just pretend that you have some interest, and they may be able to help you out a little bit more. So that's definitely what I would suggest. Every country has their own laws, and in fact, every state or province or region has their own laws. So you need to really check that out for your own self. What I would just ultimately in all situations say that you should invest in real assets. If it's in the banking system, it's subject to confiscation. How to become okay to have so much personal debt. Basically he gets into the fact that people are just, they're buying everything on financing, couches and sofas and fridges and TVs. When the economy collapses, these indebted people will become unemployed. They're going to lose everything. They're going to have to pawn their possessions to write down their debts. This is a cascading domino effect that will strip everyday people of everything, and the answer is yes. And that is the intention. You make a very good point, Tim, and this is exactly what happens. The governments, or I shouldn't say the governments, but those who control the governments know exactly how to manipulate people. They use propaganda. In fact, you have to read the book Propaganda. It's excellent. Edward Bernays, genius book, unfortunately in a bad way, but it really explains how this is all working, and it works so well. And people are just falling into it. They're thinking, you know what? If that guy's getting into debt, I'm going to get into debt too. And they continue the spiral down, just feeding the system. You think you're beating the bankers by getting into debt? You're just fueling their system. That's all you're doing. Will gold and other precious metals be confiscated in the US and other countries? I do believe it's possible, but I don't see it as likely. That's what I'll say with that. What is your opinion on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as an investment versus gold? So I like the concept of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I do not like Bitcoin in general, the way that people are into it. They feel that it's the be-all, end-all. It's where you should put all of your savings, and I really don't agree with that. If you want to have a little play money, that's up to you. Go ahead and do that. But if you're just dropping all of your money in thinking it's foolproof, that is not a good idea at all. I do believe that, if you want to put some money in there, it's great. Do that. If you want to really look at its strength, I believe that it is its ability to transact between two people over long distances with minimal costs involved. That's where I think is really key. When the economy crashes, would it be better to have a house in the country with chickens, solar panels, a garden, and a well? Or is it possible to sell the house and pay off all the debts to buy a smaller house, pay off the cards, and still have a good sum to have almost enough to pay for another house? Well, it depends on where you live, depends on your situation, what you want to do. Do you work somewhere that you will need to drive for hours a day to get to this place that you want to live in. The ultimate, yes, is to have this house in the country. Ultimately, that's the safest thing to do. You're out of the general population, you're self-sufficient, but it depends on your lifestyle. If you have to drive 2 hours to get into work every day, maybe it's really not worth it. So that's something that you need to address for yourself. But in terms of safety and security, absolutely no question. Hello from Vietnam. Wow. I've been following you recently and really admire your work. My question relates to the political race to the White House. Who do you think should become the next U.S. president? Will have the courage to stop printing fiat currency and the banks fall down and restructure? Absolutely not. Whoever we get will simply be the next one in line. It continues to get worse, so that's what leads me to believe that it's probably Hillary Clinton that's going to be in, but we don't know what will happen until then. I don't see it getting any better, so that's what leads me to believe Hillary Clinton's going to be in there. Thank you, John. I appreciate your hard work. When do you think the collapse will place in the next few months? Many economists are saying very soon. Let's just define when we say collapse. I'm not necessarily talking about a major collapse happening. Let's say the global economic collapse really soon. I do see that will take a little bit of time. But absolutely, we already saw that Canada was admittedly in what they called a mini recession. Recently, the US's growth is just dragging down. Other countries like China are slowing down as well. So this is, something that absolutely will be a cause for concern in the coming months. Whether that's, some big collapse, I'm not really sure of that, but it's definitely, something is definitely brewing at this time. Do you think the UK should vote for Brexit, and how do you see this affecting the economy? I do think they should go for it, absolutely. Less hands, or less, let's say, unelected bureaucrats controlling your nation. I'm all in favor of that. And how do you see it affecting the economy? Perhaps initially not so good, but ultimately in the long term, very good. What's the safest form of investing in stocks without getting an actual stock certificate? I don't do the whole stock game right now, so I would just suggest, if you're interested in stocks, just go to your local bank, set up an account, and trade away. You don't have to really start with much. If you go through the bank, you have your account there, and you can just have your own play money. That's what I would suggest. Where do you see the price of silver and gold, which is the safest currency now, say to the end of the year? Well, the fluctuations are so dramatic, it's really hard to tell. As far as the price of silver and gold, I would say they'll be trading in a range here, give or take a few hundred. In terms of gold and silver, within $10, it's more volatile. But these are just guesses. I really couldn't tell you. All I would say is that if you believe that precious metals are good to hold for the reasons that I've always said, that you're going to have something to pass on generation to generation, then you should buy it no matter what the price is at this time. It's, I would say, very reasonable at this time. Safest currency right now, I really don't think any currencies are strong, but some would argue and suggest that the Singapore currency, the Swiss franc, but everybody's printing. So to say that any one is more safe than the other, it's hard for me to say. You're creating video after video telling us how bad things are, but I find it frustrating that you aren't telling us what we should do about it. Well, just to interrupt just for a moment, I have mentioned many, many times, and that is to buy real assets to become self-sufficient. I get that you're trying to get people's attention with fear. I disagree with that. But do you have any suggestions that you can as to what someone should do to prepare themselves? Absolutely. Let's just list off a whole bunch of them. Again, let's get into the food preparation. You should have large bags of rice, canned food, storable food, freeze-dried food. You need to have food preparation. You need a garden. You need to have sprouts. You need to have seeds. Let's move on. We're going to need water. Now you should have a water catch system if you can. If not, to actually be enough to, use for your home, it should have enough to water the garden. You need to have a water filter that does not require power, like a big Berkey. Those are excellent. You can also get a water filter for your whole home. You can get one for your shower. These are essential things, I believe. You need to have a medical kit. You need to have precious metals to some degree, small denominations, junk or common silver. You need to be able to get passive income when you're not working. How can you do that? You can get into any sorts of businesses. You can create your own product or service that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You need to do your research on that. Other preparations you can make are simply to get yourself into a further place outside of the city if you can. You need to be debt-free if you can. These are some things. I hope that I've made my point. I've made these points many times before. Perhaps you're relatively new to the channel. I don't mention it every single video, but certainly would like to mention it as often as possible. How will the TPP affect Mexico? In which sector of our economy do you think opportunities will rise? I think that the TPP is detrimental to all countries involved.